15 famous people whose appearances on talk shows were the disaster that doomed their careers. For decades, you've enjoyed seeing them on film, revered them as icons, and even welcomed them into your homes. But when those well-constructed personalities crumble in the span of a few minutes of live television, what then? I'm referring to those jaw-dropping, career-ending instances when A-listers in Hollywood completely disregarded the cameras and paid the ultimate price. Whether they were popular sitcom stars or Oscar winners, these 15 celebrities had it all until they dared to go onto a talk show stage and seen their reputations crumble in front of millions of viewers. Their own haughtiness betrayed some of them. Substance misuse claimed the lives of others. The stress of unscripted television was too much for some. However, one terrible reality is shared by all of them. After that, their careers changed drastically. As studios and publicists scurried, Americans watched in disbelief as decades of kindness vanished in an instant. These were more than just instances of embarrassment. The stars wasted millions of dollars in possibilities and public esteem due to these disastrous professional decisions. All eyes are on the most horrific suicides that have ever aired on television today. What could have possibly pushed these famous people to ruin their careers? Would they have all been able to pull through if they had simply followed the script? We'll discover out when we go down the list of 15 famous people who ruined their careers by appearing on talk programs. I am inquiring. All of these things can be abused, and I get that. Here is the issue, as you can see. You are ignorant of psychiatry's past. Yeah, I do. Tom Cruise, the man whose couch jump made headlines worldwide. In May of 2005, Tom Cruise sprang onto Oprah Winfrey's stage as perhaps the world's biggest movie star. Cruise could make or break studios with his $25 million per picture Mission Impossible franchise, Jerry Maguire, Top Gun, and other hits. On that spring day, nevertheless, an odd thing occurred. On Oprah, Cruise leaped onto the couch, clenched his hands, and went down on one knee to proclaim his love for Katie Holmes. Audience members were confused about whether to cheer or contact security due to the unusual behavior. The words "You're gone. You are gone" echoed around the room as Oprah tried to rein it in. Cruise didn't seem to care that his actions were being seen by people at home. Quick and brutal was the public's response. Overnight, Cruise became a punchline thanks to late-night comedians. The proliferation of memes and parodies occurred throughout the early stages of the internet. Even America's golden boy appeared to be losing it all of a sudden. Even worse than the couch jumping was. A month later, Cruise promoted War of the Worlds on the Today Show alongside Matt Lauer. Cruise verbalized his growing frustration as the topic of psychiatry and Scientology came up, accusing Lauer of being glib and describing psychiatry as a pseudoscience. You are ignorant of psychiatry's past. Cruise scolded. I do, making Lauer seem uneasy. There was devastating destruction. Despite Steven Spielberg's direction, War of the Worlds failed to do well at the box office. The 14-year partnership between Cruise and Paramount Pictures came to an end when Chairman Sumar Redstone told the Wall Street Journal that Cruise's actions constituted creative suicide. His Q score, which indicates the liability of a celebrity, dropped by a staggering 40%. Cruise would re-establish his career through pure willpower and death-delaying antics in the end, but he lost years of public support and tens of millions of dollars in profits due to his brief appearance on Oprah's sofa. The takeaway was obvious. A disastrous performance on a talk show may ruin anyone's career, even the most bankable Hollywood celebrity. Anyone present, whites, blacks, Hispanics, felt the full force of that wrath, not to mention the legendary comedian Michael Richards' racist outburst. Cosmo Kramer, Michael Richards' beloved eccentric from Seinfeld, who enthusiastically stormed Jerry's door for 9 hilarious seasons, will remain a fond memory for millions of Americans. Richards, however, produced an entirely different television moment on November 17, 2006, which would discredit him for the rest of his life. A few days prior, Richards had erupted into a racist rant at African-American patrons who had heckled him during his stand-up performance at Los Angeles' Laugh Factory. The unsightly incident was recorded on cell phone film, and the video quickly went viral online. Richards tried to defuse the situation by making an appearance on David Letterman's Late Show via satellite, with Jerry Seinfeld, his former co-worker from Seinfeld, already present. The next 6 minutes of television were so awkward that viewers couldn't decide whether to gasp in laughter or cringe. Richards adamantly stated, "I'm not a racist. That's what's so insane about this," while the studio audience uncomfortably giggled, seemingly assuming this was a comic routine. They were reprimanded by Seinfeld. "Stop laughing. It's not funny." Richards' apology was awkward and self-absorbed. paying more attention to his feelings of hurt than to the pain he had caused. There was instant and permanent harm when he proclaimed, "I'm deeply, deeply sorry," before going on a racist tirade and asserting, "I'm not a racist." That's what's so insane about this. Richards announced his departure from stand-up comedy in a matter of days. Postings for jobs dwindled. Even though Richards' days as a beloved TV personality were past, residual earnings from Seinfeld repeats persisted. Despite Richards' best efforts at crisis management, his brief appearance on Letterman's show only served to solidify public impression that he possessed very unsettling beliefs, at worst, and out of touch at most. Through the prism of that talk show, what could have been written off as a horrific slip of judgment became proof of something more troubling. The phrase, "Oh, stop it," is unpopular. Dear audience, will you kindly cease your actions? Lower the level of your sound. Too sultry for the small screen, Madonna. Madonna had already cemented her position as the leading provocateur in mainstream music by 1994. Over the course of her career, Madonna has done everything from publishing her explicit sex book to writhing on the floor in a wedding dress at the MTV Video Music Awards, all in an effort to push limits and challenge conventional sensibilities. Nothing could have prepared even the unshockable David Letterman for her March 31st, 1994, appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman. The energy was electric as soon as Madonna stepped onto the stage. Unprecedented for network television at the time, she proceeded to use profanity 14 times after showing Letterman her panties. She remained on stage after the segment ended, smoked a cigar, and made vulgar comments about Letterman's private life. Letterman informed the audience, with a hint of frustration, "This is live television, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to have to start bleeping everything." He made a joke about how he had never seen a lady smoke a cigar. The most of the time, it's in pursuit of something else. The episode became infamous, requiring unprecedented censorship with over 130 bleeps during broadcast. Critics and fans alike were divided. Some saw it as Madonna pushing the envelope in her trademark fashion. Others viewed it as a desperate attempt at shock value from an artist whose star was beginning to fade. The fallout was significant. Radio stations temporarily banned Madonna's music. Her album Bedtime Stories, released later that year, underperformed compared to previous releases. And the incident reinforced growing criticism that Madonna relied on controversy rather than artistry, a perception that would dog her for years to come. While Madonna ultimately recovered and reinvented herself multiple times over the following decades, that single appearance on Letterman's couch marked a turning point in how the public perceived her. Less as a boundary-pushing artist, and more as someone willing to create controversy at any cost. Stop it with, "And you do this, and you're mean, and you're that." You are not the one to interview a person who does humor. Sorry. Joan Rivers, the final walk-off. Joan Rivers built her legendary comedy career on being fearless, brash, and unapologetically herself. For decades, she skewered celebrities with her signature line, "Can we talk?" By 2014, at age 81, Rivers had survived countless career ups and downs, reinventing herself as a fashion critic on Fashion Police and becoming a pioneer for women in comedy. But on July 5th, 2014, Rivers appeared on CNN for what should have been a routine interview about her new book. When interviewer Fredaria Whitfield characterized Rivers' fashion commentary as mean, Rivers grew visibly irritated. "It's not mean. It isn't cruel. I say the truth, and it's not mean," Rivers said. "This whole interview is becoming a defensive interview," Rivers snapped. "Are you wearing leather shoes?" Whitfield persisted in questioning Rivers about the possible controversy surrounding wearing fur on her book cover. Rivers reached her breaking point as a result. "Then shut up." With that, Rivers removed her earpiece and walked off set, leaving Whitfield stunned. "I'm going," Rivers declared. "I really am. I'm going because I'm selling a comedy book, and you won't laugh about anything." The clip went viral immediately, with many commentators suggesting that Rivers had finally gone too far, that the queen of insult comedy couldn't take what she dished out. Just 2 months later, Rivers would pass away due to complications from a routine throat procedure, making this contentious interview one of her final public appearances. While Rivers didn't live to see the long-term impact of this incident, many industry observers noted that it reinforced a growing perception that she had become too harsh, too bitter for changing times, that the comedy pioneer had failed to evolve with the culture. Rather than highlighting her groundbreaking legacy, the CNN walk-off became for many Rivers' unfortunate final act. "I think you know in life pretty much what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing, and I did a bad thing. And there you have it. Hugh Grant, the worst guest ever. When Hugh Grant charmed his way into America's heart with 4 weddings and a funeral in 1994, he seemed destined for a long career as Hollywood's favorite British gentleman. Even a scandalous arrest with a prostitute in 1995 couldn't derail his appeal. In fact, his humble Tonight Show apology to Jay Leno actually enhanced his likability. But by 2012, Grant's off-camera behavior was becoming increasingly problematic. And no one made this more clear than The Daily Show host Jon Stewart, who publicly labeled Grant the worst guest ever during a fundraiser at the Montclair Film Festival. Stewart didn't mince words, describing Grant's 2009 appearance to promote "Did you hear about the Morgans?" as a nightmare. According to Stewart, Grant was causing trouble for everyone backstage and was complaining about the clip that the film's publicist had given them. "What is that clip?" Grant reportedly told Stewart. "It's a terrible clip." And Stewart responded, "Well, then make a better movie." Stewart was so offended by Grant's behavior that he swore he would never have him back on the show. A surprising move for a host who interviewed countless celebrities over 16 years. When Grant heard about Stewart's comments, he did something unexpected. He admitted fault. Grant wrote on Twitter, "It turns out my inner crab got the better of me with TV producer in 2009. Unforgivable. Jay Stewart correct to give me kicking." Despite the apology, the damage was done. Grant's reputation in Hollywood took a significant hit. Studios became hesitant to cast him in leading roles, concerned about his on-set behavior. His next few films underperformed at the box office, and the roles Grant was offered became increasingly supporting rather than starring. It wasn't until 2016's Florence Foster Jenkins that Grant began to rehabilitate his image, embracing character roles rather than the charming romantic lead that had made him famous. But those few minutes of diva behavior on The Daily Show and Stewart's public rebuke cost Grant years of career momentum and millions in potential earnings. "After Sarah and Michael Fisherman attacked me. Why didn't he say something that day? Why didn't he say something before they canceled me? They had 20 minutes to say something. Come out and say Roseanne Barr a reboot ruined." In 2018, Roseanne Barr was riding high on an improbable comeback. More than 20 years after her groundbreaking sitcom Roseanne had ended, ABC had revived the series to massive ratings. The premiere drew over 18 million viewers, unheard of numbers in the age of streaming and cable fragmentation. Barr was once again a television powerhouse with a reported salary of $500,000 per episode. Then in the early hours of May 29, 2018, Barr posted a racist tweet about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett. By noon, ABC had canceled her show despite its massive success. Barr's career imploded in real time, with cast members disavowing her comments and reruns of the original series pulled from circulation. In the aftermath, Barr embarked on a disastrous media tour that only made things worse. On Sean Hannity's Fox News program in July 2018, Barr offered a confusing apology that seemed to miss the point entirely. "I apologize to her and to all Americans," Barr said of Jarrett before pivoting to complaints about being labeled a racist. "I made a mistake. Even before I lost everything, I regretted it." What really demonstrated how disconnected Barr had grown, though, was her September appearance on Dr. Droz. Barr shifted the blame to her medicine, her politics, and her ignorance of Jared's race instead of apologizing plainly. Viewers heard empty justifications. Dr. Oz attempted to shift the topic of discussion to healing, but Barr got defensive. "My apologies," she said with a hint of testiness. 2 months have passed. I have sought forgiveness, described what happened, and apologized. Public view was solidified by the appearances on the talk shows. It was about Barr's character, not a single tweet. Without further ado, ABC relaunched her sitcom as The Connors, eliminating Barr's role. Everyone understood. Even if Barr was radioactive, the network still appreciated the show's heritage and the other actors. Decades of hard work to revive a career were utterly ruined in a matter of months. Talk show appearances by Barr did little to enhance her cause and cost her tens of millions of dollars in lost income and residuals. Yes, because we address serious problems while adding a humorous spin to make them more approachable. Yeah. The fall of Kanye West, a genius in ruins. Kanye West has always been very provocative and opinionated, even before he officially changed his name to Ye. However, as his conduct got more unpredictable in the late 2000s, his appearances on talk shows shifted from promoting his music to revealing his disturbing worldview. In 2018, West made an especially illuminating appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Kimmel cut to a commercial break after West awkwardly went silent for a few seconds when asked about his support for President Trump. When they got back, they completely dropped the subject. This is a strange choice for a show that heavily relies on its viral moments. The real demonstration of West's declining public image, however, came with his appearance on Piers Morgan and Censored in 2022. In response to criticism of his anti-Semitic remarks, West first reaffirmed his position before apologizing with qualifications. "I will say I'm sorry for the people that I hurt with the DEFCON comment," West stated, referring to an anti-Semitic tweet. "Sorry to the families of those who had nothing to do with the anguish I went through. I feel bad that I confused and upset them." Morgan refused to budge. "Apologies are not necessary. That clarifies it." Many were already worried about West's sanity and mental health before the disastrous appearance. Shortly after the artist's Yeezy brand launched, Adidas severed the lucrative partnership that had earned West an estimated $1.5 billion. Additionally, CAA, Balenciaga, and Gap all cut connections. Although West's musical prowess had always taken precedence over his provocative remarks, his more intense social media presence and appearances on talk shows turned off many of his loyal fans. Businesses were unable to decouple art from its creator, and in a few short days, West's fortune reportedly dropped from billionaire to $400 million. These TV appearances weren't merely a setback for West's career. They were the outward sign of his troubled inner collapse, which would lead to the demise of his business empire. Playing tennis with Shelley Walu. "I have no idea what you're up to" would be an even better idea, in my opinion. So what? Norm Macdonald's comeback plans take a tumble. When it came to his comedic career, Norm Macdonald was unafraid to be politically incorrect. He was beloved by many and reviled by more due to his deadpan delivery and willingness to create gags that other comics wouldn't dare touch. In 1998, Macdonald was let go from his position as Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update desk by none other than NBC president Don Allmeyer. A career revival was sweeping Macdonald 20 years later. Norm Macdonald, who has his own chat show on Netflix, will debut in September 2018. The comedian, who had battled for a long time to discover an appropriate venue for his exceptional abilities, should have felt a sense of success at this moment. Unfortunately, Macdonald made some contentious remarks while promoting the program with The Hollywood Reporter. She defended disgraced comedians Louis C.K. and Roseanne Barr, implying that victims of racism and sexual misconduct hadn't endured as much pain as the offenders who had their careers cut short. Just few hours before taping began, Macdonald's appearance on The Tonight Show was canceled due to the rapid outcry. Attempting to manage the fallout, Macdonald made the unfortunate choice to appear on The View the next day. Instead than expressing regret, Macdonald appeared to have dug himself a deeper hole. He tried to explain, appearing noticeably uneasy, that the victims weren't forced to endure this. As co-host Joy Behar retorted, "This particular event, losing everything in a day. Of course, the victims have gone through worse than that. But you'd have to have Down syndrome not to feel sorry for the victims," using a term that itself was inappropriate and offensive. Down syndrome, that's my new phrase. Macdonald jested awkwardly, adding insult to injury. This whole thing was a paragon of non-apologizing. Despite Netflix's support, Macdonald's program was discreetly dropped after only one season due to a lack of promotion. The comic, who had created a name for himself by constantly challenging convention, had gone too far, and his effort at TV damage control had the opposite effect. In 2021, Macdonald succumbed to cancer, leaving behind a complex legacy. However, that terrible episode on The View stained many of his latter years. Just in case you forgot, not even the most daring provocateurs in comedy were able to avoid the career-ending effects of daytime TV. If they are here, you'd better locate them and hand them over to me right away. Chadwick Bose, triumphant in career suicide. Charlie Sheen reportedly earned $1.8 million per episode for CBS's smash comedy 2.5 Men in early 2011, making him the highest-paid actor on television. A cautionary story about the perils of marrying mental health concerns, substance abuse, and unfiltered access to media platforms. He had lost custody of his children, been dismissed from the show, and become a national icon by March of that year. It was during an interview on ABC's Good Morning America on February 28, 2011. Yet Sheen's breakdown was the most publicized of his many appearances on talk shows. Sheen, who seemed nervous and spoke quickly, made a string of outrageous comments that went into the popular cultural canon right away. "My moods are stable. Well, I'm winning by a hair." To save his job, Sheen made a bold statement. "I'm different. I have a different brain. I have a different heart. I've got tiger blood, man." In response to Andrea Canning's question about whether he was under the influence of drugs, Sheen said, "I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it once, you will die. Your face will melt off and your children will weep over your exploded body." The interview was set up to save Sheen's job. Rather, it solidified CBS's choice to terminate his employment. Shortly after, Warner Brothers Television officially ended Sheen's contract, stating that he had engaged in morally reprehensible and potentially harmful self-destructive behavior. The monetary effect was enormous. 2.5 Men cost Sheen an estimated $100 million in future earnings. His subsequent series, Anger Management on FX, had promising beginnings but eventually bombed, leaving him with a pittance of his previous per-episode income after 100 episodes. Plus, in the span of a single night, Sheen went from beloved bad boy to disturbed addict in the eyes of the general public. Despite having previously delivered critically lauded performances in films such as Wall Street and Platoon, his Tiger Blood moment became a punchline and put a damper on an otherwise brilliant career. More than his 3 decades of acting, those few minutes on Good Morning America defined Charlie Sheen's career. He would later try to restore his image and reveal an HIV diagnosis. What's going on is that we were filming a scene when Ted suggested we revisit it because it was a memorable moment in the film, but now he's suggesting I study this thing for 4 months before I utilize it. Uncomfortable intoxication, Mark Wahlberg. One of Hollywood's most remarkable reinvention tales is Mark Wahlberg's rise from troubled youth to esteemed actor and producer. In spite of a troubled upbringing in Boston that included drug selling and a jail term, Wahlberg became a Calvin Klein model, rapper, actor, and producer who was nominated for an Oscar. However, in 2013, The Graham Norton Show revealed a different side of Wahlberg, which jeopardized her decades-long efforts to repair her image. Upon taking his seat, Wahlberg's intoxication was immediately apparent as he promoted his film Broken City alongside Sarah Silverman, Michael Fassbender, and James McAvoy. He got on Norton's lap, made improper comments to Silverman, with whom he had a sexual relationship, and continuously interrupted other guests. Norton eventually spoke out and said, "Are you drunk?" Finally, Wahlberg mumbled an explanation that failed to persuade anyone. "I'm not drunk. I'm just really tired." Silverman became noticeably distressed when Wahlberg made an unwanted touch to her hair and face. "Why are you touching me?" she inquired anxiously, trying to shrug off the uncomfortable situation. The appearance went viral for all the wrong reasons, with viewers and critics describing it as painful, embarrassing, and cringeworthy. Coming from an actor who had spent years distancing himself from his troubled past, the drunken display was particularly damaging. In the aftermath, Wahlberg's team went into damage control mode. The actor himself kept a low profile for several months, canceling several scheduled talk show appearances. When he did return to the promotional circuit for his next film, Two Guns, he was noticeably more restrained. While Wahlberg ultimately recovered from this misstep, industry insiders noted that several prestigious projects he had been attached to went with different actors in the months following his Norton appearance. For a star who had worked tirelessly to be taken seriously as both an actor and producer, one night of drunken behavior on British television proved surprisingly costly. And Waken, I'm sorry you couldn't be here tonight. Joaquin Phoenix, method acting misfire. When Phoenix appeared on Late Show with David Letterman on February 11th, 2009, viewers knew something was off the moment he walked on stage. With a full beard, dark sunglasses, and chewing gum, Phoenix mumbled incoherent responses and seemed completely detached from reality. "You've been out of the movie business for a while. So what's been going on with you?" Letterman asked. "I've been working on my music," Phoenix mumbled, referring to his supposed new career as a hip-hop artist. When Letterman tried to engage him about his final film, Two Lovers, Phoenix could barely form complete sentences. The interview reached its awkward climax when Letterman, clearly frustrated, quipped, "Joaquin, I'm sorry you couldn't be here tonight." The audience roared with laughter while Phoenix looked on in confused silence. What viewers didn't know was that the entire appearance was an elaborate performance for I'm Still Here, a mockumentary directed by Phoenix's brother-in-law, Casey Affleck, about Phoenix abandoning acting for a hip-hop career. The film was intended as a commentary on celebrity culture and the public's fascination with stars' personal lives. The problem, no one was in on the joke. For over a year, Phoenix maintained the charade, leading many in Hollywood to believe he was experiencing a genuine breakdown. His acting career stalled completely with directors unwilling to risk casting someone they perceived as unstable. When I'm Still Here was finally released in September 2010, critics were unimpressed. The New York Times called it a tedious, self-indulgent prank. Box office results were even worse, with the film earning just $568,963 worldwide against a budget of $2 million. Phoenix returned to Letterman's show in September 2010 to apologize and explain the hoax, but the damage to his career was already done. It would be 2 years before Phoenix returned to acting in Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, 2012, and even longer before directors fully trusted him with major roles again. While Phoenix eventually rebounded, even winning an Oscar for Joker in 2020, his Letterman appearance cost him years of prime career momentum and millions in lost earnings. As experiments go, this one proved extraordinarily expensive. I don't even know what that means. It's cool to hear you say it, though. Yeah. Shia LaBeouf, from child star to peculiar performance artist. Shia LaBeouf's transition from Disney Channel star to Hollywood leading man seemed guaranteed when Steven Spielberg cast him as the lead in the Transformers franchise. By his mid-20s, LaBeouf had starred in blockbusters grossing over $4 billion worldwide and was positioned as one of the industry's most bankable young actors. But a series of bizarre talk show appearances in 2013 and 2014 changed everything. On The Ellen DeGeneres Show in October 2013, LaBeouf appeared withdrawn and uncomfortable, giving short, cryptic answers to DeGeneres' questions about his recent performance art pieces and public stunts. "I'm learning to deal with that banana cake that gets served to you," LaBeouf told a confused DeGeneres, who struggled to maintain the conversation. Even more damaging was his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live in October 2013, where LaBeouf recounted a strange story about dropping acid and chasing a stranger at the Broadway show Orphans, from which he had recently been fired. As he told the rambling, occasionally incoherent story, audience laughter shifted from with him to at him. These appearances coincided with increasingly erratic public behavior, including wearing a paper bag over his head at the Berlin Film Festival with the words, "I am not famous anymore," written on it. While LaBeouf would later explain these actions as performance art, the damage to his commercial viability was real. Studios became hesitant to cast him in big-budget films, concerned about his reliability and public image. The young actor who had once been groomed as the next Harrison Ford found himself relegated to independent films and art projects. "I became a liability to studios," LaBeouf later admitted in a 2016 interview. "Nobody wants to hire the drunk lunatic shouting about art on the red carpet." While LaBeouf has found critical success in smaller films like Honey Boy and The Peanut Butter Falcon, his days as a Hollywood leading man effectively ended during those strange talk show appearances of 2013 to 2014. This incident serves as a cautionary tale about the rapid downfall of an A-lister's career when their public persona becomes too unstable for record labels to invest millions on. Sound Farrah Fawcett, a saint from the 70s who slipped away. American Beauty Farrah Fawcett was a golden girl. Fawcett embodied the ideal of American beauty for an entire generation with her unforgettable performance in Charlie's Angels, the red swimsuit poster that went on to sell 12 million copies, and her radiant smile. Unfortunately, Fawcett's career took a nosedive in the late 90s. Younger stars had supplanted her as Hollywood's girls, and her efforts to be properly considered as a dramatic actress had been met with mixed results. To promote her new Playboy issue and remind fans of her everlasting appeal, she made an appearance on Late Show with David Letterman on June 5, 1997, which was intended to be a sort of return moment. Rather, it turned out to be one of the most awkward looks in the annals of talk shows. It seemed like Fawcett was lost and confused the second she stepped foot on stage. She often lost her train of thought, giggled inappropriately, and told stories that went nowhere. Letterman eventually inquired, "Are you all right?" with an air of genuine worry. "I'm simply enjoying myself," Fawcett said, her English slightly garbled. A more and more irrational Fawcett emerged as the interview went on. At one point, she got to her feet, pretended to write on Letterman's desk, and then used a little mirror to fix her hair. At first giddy with excitement to witness the disenchanted sex symbol, the crowd's reaction quickly turned uncomfortable as the weird spectacle unfolded. The reason behind Fawcett's actions was the subject of much conjecture. Some others thought she was taking medicine or narcotics. Some people were concerned that she might be sick. Later on, Fawcett would say that she was just frightened and attempting an unrehearsed, spontaneous performance. Her reputation took a major hit almost immediately, regardless of what caused it. "Has Farrah lost it?" And other such headlines ran the following day in newspapers and on entertainment programs. The presence became the main story whenever her name was brought up, overshadowing the Playboy issue she was there to promote. Although Fawcett would later gain admiration for her courageous public fight against illness prior to her 2009 death, that one moment on Letterman changed the way a whole generation saw her, turning her from a legendary sex symbol into a cautionary tale about Hollywood aging. This political correctness is a new power, and Trump is destroying it. Will Geraldo Rivera now have my support? A career-ending fractured nose. Geraldo Rivera gained notoriety in the 1980s for his expose of the Willowbrook State School for the Intellectually Disabled, which he used to try to establish himself as a serious journalist before becoming a Fox News presenter. However, a piece that Rivera hosted on his talk program on November 3, 1988, would have a lasting impact on his career trajectory. White nationalists, anti-racist skinheads, black activists, and Jewish activists were all on stage at the same time in the Teen Hate Groups episode. A dangerous mix that Rivera's producers apparently set up to provoke the audience to their breaking point. A fight broke out in a matter of minutes. Someone hurled a chair at Rivera, smashing his nose on live television, as the scene became increasingly chaotic. "Excuse me, but this isn't the point of the show," Rivera apologized to the camera. People weren't buying it. Even if it was, this is television at its worst. It appeared like the whole thing was manufactured for ratings, especially because Rivera refused medical attention and kept on with the broadcast with his nose stuffy. According to the New York Times and the Journalism Review at Columbia University, it was trash TV and one of the worst episodes in American television history. After the incident, Rivera found it difficult to be respected for her journalism. With Rivera's bloodied visage as its poster child, the episode became shorthand for the sensationalism that was starting to dominate daytime television. "My credibility was ruined," Rivera would later confess. "It took me a decade to recover professionally." That nose-breaking tragedy changed Rivera's career trajectory forever, but he did finally rebuild it as a war journalist and subsequently as a conservative commentator. Due to one poorly planned episode, the Yale-educated lawyer who had previously broken major stories about institutional abuse became, in the opinion of many viewers, simply another tabloid talk show host ready to do anything for ratings. "Imagine how nice I smell while you're around. You sing well, and I'm feeling great." Defeating James Brown, The Godfather falls. James Brown has been known as the hardest-working guy in show business for decades thanks to his breathtaking live performances and critically acclaimed albums. I Got You, I Feel Good, and Papa's Got a Brand New Bag were just a few of Brown's groundbreaking soul tunes. His electrifying live performances and groundbreaking rhythms impacted artists as diverse as Michael Jackson and MC Jagger. Viewers saw a completely different side of the renowned artist when Brown made an appearance on Sonia Live, a CNN program, in April 1988. Brown looked bewildered right from the start of the conversation, what with his signature processed hair and sunglasses worn indoors. Brown gave an almost incoherent response when host Sonia Friedman inquired about his recent arrest for allegedly beating his wife. "My language is pure. This is serious business. And I'm referring to the right thing." Brown spoke in a disjointed, slurred manner. When one man is down, another man is down. That's the point. Brown became more and more rambling in his responses as the conversation progressed. Brown began a rambling monologue on his mother and childhood that had nothing to do with the questions presented when Friedman tried to redirect the topic to his music. It didn't take long for critics and viewers to assume that Brown was high. His reported intoxication with PCP led to a high-speed pursuit over the state boundary between Georgia and South Carolina less than 3 months later, lending credence to the idea. The event would result in Brown serving 2 years in prison. The public's perception of Brown took a dramatic swing after her appearance on CNN. The man's musical legacy was safe, but he was seen as disturbed and unstable. His once legendary concerts started to attract smaller audiences, and record sales started to fall. The CNN interview changed the public's perception of Brown from a cultural revolutionary to a cautionary story, and from a musical pioneer to a damaged icon. This was true even though Brown had brief career resurgences before his death in 2006. Those few minutes on CNN ruined a lifetime of accomplishment for a guy who had triumphed over poverty and racism to become one of the most influential artists of the 20th century.